Unashamed, the Recovery Podcast.
Hey, Recovery fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unashamed Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Drew.
I'm Drew.
I'm your host, Josh. That's Drew.
Josh is confused. Let's just meet today's guest.
And hello, Recovery family. Welcome to another episode of the Unashamed Recovery Podcast, where it's okay to not be okay.
And where we're breaking the shame of and stigma of addiction and recovery and sobriety just by sharing real stories of real people who have been in addiction and how they come up through their struggle of addiction.
On today's episode, we're going from backpacks to the burbs. Oh, yeah.
We have yet another amazing story to share with you guys today.
Our guest, he's no stranger to hopelessness, homelessness, addiction, and rock bottom.
But on the flip side, he's no stranger to sobriety, recovery, freedom, and sharing hope. Today's guest is a native of Joplin, but current resident of South Haven, Mississippi.
He's one of the Mississippi state reps for Celebrate Recovery.
Area vice presidents for Verteva Health, a national behavioral health care system for mental health and substance use conditions. Founder of the Hope Center community of North Mississippi.
And he is the author of the brand new book From Backpack to the Burbs, about one man's epic journey from the pit to the palace. Welcome, Mr. Stacy Dodd.
Thank you.
And Mr. Stacy, I know that was quite the intro. Is there anything that we might have missed or left out, or anything else that you want to add to that?
No, sir.
All right. Well, we got a lot to dissect and to unpack on today's episode, but we're trying something different for today's episode.
Is this coming out of the backpack, though? Backpack to the burbs. Hey.
Unpacking the backpack.
Hey.
I like that. But we're going to try something different, and we're going to kind of do a little bit of an icebreaker for all of our listeners out there. We're going to kind of just ask Stacy some very off-the-wall questions to kind of let y'all get to know him a little bit better. Stacy, number one, what's something weird that you're good at?
Rock hunting.
Rock hunting. Interesting.
They're actually artifacts, but you would call them rocks.
Okay. I feel better about that now.
I was like, rock hunt?
I was almost...
I have an archaeological site, actually.
Really?
I do.
That's awesome.
Nice.
An official site. Yep.
Now, where is that at?
Just west of Joplin, Missouri, on the old Route 66 Zoo, on the old Route 66,
Okay.
on the state line road. Kansas and Missouri is a state line road. Yep.
Any dinosaur fossils ever been found?
Absolutely.
Man, that's
That'd be cool.
Been doing it for 20 years.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Rock hunter.
Yeah.
Rock
I'm glad I actually asked that question.
Yeah.
Because that's I was a little afraid at first. I was like, okay, this done went south. But I'm glad we done. All right. So next question: warm leftover food or cold leftover food?
It depends on what it is, but I'll say warm.
I'm a cold guy myself.
I'm about to say, it depends on, for me, like today, I had some really good leftover Mexican chicken nachos.
Yeah.
And it was really good cold. Like, really good. Now, back whenever I was in college, I would do cold pizza.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But since I've been in my 30s, can't do it. Like, cannot do it.
I hate to say why I'm so accustomed to cold food. It's more along the lines of when I was in my addiction. Like, dude, because I didn't have power in some areas.
Yeah, that's right.
It'd just be like, all right, well, that's cool. I'm gonna eat it like that.
That's right. That's right.
I just went with it, and so now I stay stuck there a little bit whenever I'm pulling stuff out of the fridge. I'm like, let's eat that cold, you know. So,
And some people are like, no, and it's like,
dude, you
I
have
love it this
no
way.
idea what I've eaten cold before. So.
All right, Stacy, what is the worst compliment that you've ever gotten?
The worst compliment?
The worst compliment. That's tough.
Probably that I love too much.
That is that bad or is that good?
Well, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of like leadership. Some view leading through love as a weakness. Some view it as a strength. I believe it all depends on who you're leading.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right, and we have a big long list, but we're going to wrap it up with this one. This is going to be the last one. What is your weirdest phobia?
Weirdest phobia.
So for me, I'm a germophobia.
A what? Germ?
Germ, like.
This dude washes his hands probably 40 times in 5 minutes.
Just,
and I don't blame him for it.
But just to give you just an idea, like if we go stay at a hotel, I'd take my own pillow, my own rags, my own towels. If I could take my own bedspread, I probably would. But yeah, like that's my weird phobia.
You should do the room up like Dexter, all plastic, and just roll around in there for a little while.
My phobia, I mean, it's more like being unorganized. You know what I mean? Either that or waking up and having lost everything. That's the thing that I worry about the most. That I'm like, even after being clean a long, long time, I still have that worry or that fear, inner fear. You know.
I bet a lot of people can relate to that though.
I'm actually dealing with that right now. In a sense, we've talked about that. So due to this knee surgery I'm about to have, I'm about to be off for like 6 weeks. And no paycheck for 6 weeks. I have literally gone through this whole freak out stage in my head, and I'm just like, I'm about to lose everything I got, everything I have right now. It's about to be gone. So, and for somebody, after you built this stuff up over time, after God's allowed you to, obtain these things, you're just like, it's fixing to just be going just like that. And so, yeah, it's.
Once you've woken up and have lost it all,
yeah,
it's something that sticks with you. And I talk about that often. My wife's like, you should have more faith than anybody. Why do you worry? And it's like, I think it comes from
past,
maybe like even trauma from the addiction.
Yeah. Man, I never thought about that. I reckon because I've never experienced
that. Well, I tell you
that.
what, God speaks, doesn't he? In moments, because I could not identify why I've had such an issue with this whole, like, I'm going to lose everything thing, and that just really speaks volume. It's a trauma. It's a trauma response. So that.
Watch that chord, you're going to make a lot of our listeners mad with hitting that chord. You're going to make Ryan mad. Well, Stacy, I think our listeners got a good little bit of feel for you on that. So let's go ahead and move on into your story. But before we start unpacking the backpack, like all great stories and great books, they all have a beginning. What does the beginning of Stacy's book look like? What is chapter 1 for you? What would chapter 1 be called?
Change.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, Stacy, as we go on and get into your story, start walking us through tell the listeners what was your addiction? What was your go-to? For me, I was a porn and sex addict. Drew, you kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I was an addict of all trades, so to speak. Yeah, I mean.
So what was your go-to, Stacy?
So I started at a very young age, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer. Then it escalated pretty quickly to weed, marijuana, all through junior high, in high school, keg parties, float trips, a little bit of cocaine, shooting up cocaine, and then on to meth. I had a real long battle with alcohol and bars and things like that, DUIs. But my drug of choice had a really bad battle in Memphis of crack cocaine in the 80s. And my family shipped me back to Missouri to get me away from the crack because I was going to die. And went back to the meth. Had a lot of friends that had meth labs, and I was really just a full-blown meth junkie.
So was the meth scene pretty heavy back in Missouri?
Oh, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. I consider myself one of the original tweakers back then. Yeah. A lot of my friends could attest to that. There's some really cool stories.
Hopefully we'll get into some of those stories. I want to hear them. So it's kind of different because the meth scene really didn't hit here in
late
central
90s,
Mississippi until
early
early 90s.
2000s. Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting that it was that far back in Missouri. Missouri is just not one of those states that you would pin to that. Like, you just.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't really think.
Yeah.
I mean, it was saturated. When I first started using meth, it was what they called crank. It was a lot of it came from California, different things like that. But it just escalated and got more popular and more popular. And pretty soon, I mean, the whole area was just ravaged by it. So.
Man.
Kind of like what we're dealing with here now.
Well, Stacy, go ahead and talk us through childhood. Take us back before you got sent back to Missouri. Talk about your childhood and what led you to that. Getting involved with the cigarettes early on and all that.
Okay. So my mom, I was born in Carthage, Missouri, up on the other side of Branson, Missouri, up by Springfield. My dad was a very successful car dealer. My mom was a registered nurse, anesthetist, and they were really, we had a nice home, things like that. They loved me very much. There was never a lack of love. There was never a lack of teaching.
Yeah.
I can't remember a time in my life where I didn't know right from wrong, because my mom was really good with a switch and a belt, and she taught me right from wrong, because when I was like 7 years old, when I first started smoking cigarettes, I was peeping around the tree.
Right.
And so when I teach on addiction, I tell people, if you're peeping or sneaking, it's wrong, right? So anyway, I started smoking cigarettes. My friends, I had a really good friend in school. I lived in a little town called Dermot, Arkansas. My mom moved to Paris, Texas, and then Benton, Arkansas, and they ended up in a little town called Dermot, Arkansas, on the other side of Greenville. Okay. And there's nothing but cotton fields. Cotton fields, the levee, and the Mississippi River. That's all there is. And I had a friend in elementary school, and we played basketball together.
Yeah.
And his dad had a 2,000-acre cotton farm. And so it was probably about 3 miles outside of town, and I loved going there. I wanted to go there every weekend. I'd be, Mama, please, can I go? And she would let me go, and they had, I hoed cotton, stomped cotton, chopped cotton, coon hunted, ran trot lines, everything, anything you can think of, country, shooting shotgun, all that kind of stuff. And but the main reason I liked going there was because I could smoke and I could drink. And no one would know. You can go out to the barn, you're out in the middle of a cotton field, no one cares if you're smoking a cigarette, or no one even knows.
Yeah.
And I ended up making really good friends with their farm hands, and their farm hands were really poor. They lived in a house that was on blocks, right? And that's who I liked being around. They had 9 kids, and they had kids. And we would sit around on Sundays and watch wrestling, and before you know it, they're fighting over coon dogs, and things like that. And but that was where I wanted to be. And so on up to, we ended up moving to a town called West Monroe, Louisiana.
West Monroe.
I went to Boley Junior High, and that was the biggest school I'd ever been in. Before I graduated, I actually changed schools 12 times.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I went to Boley. First thing I always did when I moved to a new town was find out who had the weed, because that was I had to have the weed. All through my addiction, I always had to have a supply of weed. And stayed in Boley, in West Monroe for a while, and then we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. In the 8th and 9th grade, I'm riding around on my mongoose bike with a bag of weed, big bag of weed, going to school, everything looked okay, but I was going to Metallica concerts and drinking beer with my friends on the weekends, and things like that.
Boy, down here in the South, you committed about 6 of the 10 commandments right there, huh?
Yeah, I did, man. Yeah. The only thing I actually knew at that time about God was Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew Moses and the Ark and Jonah and all that, but I had no idea anything about who Jesus was, what the Bible was. No one ever explained that to me.
Well, I want to stop right there for it. All these interviews that we've done, Drew. It never ceases to amaze me that when people go back and start talking about their childhood, they always talk about, I was still making good grades in school.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
If you go back and you listen to
every single one,
all these episodes, every person we've talked to has said that. The exact same thing. It's like this common denominator among people in recovery.
Yeah.
It's just that blows my mind. But anyway, so you've gone and you found the person with the weed in school, and you're going about your business on this bicycle. And what's next on that, Stacey?
So my mom, so back up just a little bit so you can understand what happened there. when I was 2 years old, my dad he drank a lot, and he was a great provider, loved us. I mean, great dad, one of the greatest men I've ever known in my whole entire life, my hero. But back then, about 2 or 3 nights a week, he would go to the bar after work and arm wrestle and do all these things. And he would come home and pretty violent sometimes. And he ended up breaking my mom's arm in a fight one night. And so when I'm 2 years old, my mom got up and took me and my brother and moved away. One of my first memories is just chaos in the other room, and my brother had me holding up, and they were arguing, fighting, different things. I don't remember any words or anything like that, but that was my first memory, is them fighting and things. So my mom moved away. So they took me away from my dad, right? And so the older I got, the more I could go to my grandparents' house down in North Arkansas, and he would come and see me and different things like that. So in the 9th grade, I went to visit him from Tulsa, which is about an hour from Joplin. And he came in my room that night and he said, "You're never going back." So once again, I lost all my friends. That's what really bothered me about moving. I really didn't mind starting schools and learning how to find my way around. I'd lost my friends so many times. My heart was like broken because I actually loved my friends. And it was not until I got clean that I realized all these things. When I was down in Arkansas when I was a kid, as a young boy, I witnessed a lot of racism. I witnessed a lot of things that I didn't even realize what I was witnessing at the time. But when I got clean and I started going back and looking back at my life and Celebrate Recovery and the step studies and writing my testimony, I'm like, what were those people doing and why were they doing it? And I wrote about it, and I didn't understand. But what it did throughout life, and once I got clean and found Jesus and found Christ, it made me love him even more.
Right.
It made me have a deeper love in my heart, not the opposite.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so it turned out to be really cool. And so they shipped me to my dad's. I had a stepmom and a stepbrother, and they were good people too. They really didn't I could tell they really weren't too fond of me being there. But most of the time I was running with my friends, going to keg parties. At that point, it was Pantera concerts, and it was
Pantera.
Yeah, it was Dimebag Darrell and things like that. And anyway, I had a lot of fun. Man, we would go on float trips. We would go camping at the campgrounds for the weekends. I just had a great time. I grew up out by a creek, a place called Grand Falls, and it's a really cool creek. And I didn't realize how good I had it. But when I go back, there was a big pool called Redding's Mill. I mean, just beautiful area where I grew up at, and ended up making lots of friends. I knew thousands of people in Missouri, and had a relationship in high school. Was really in love for the first time, like really in love, and she ended up cheating on me. And with one of my best friends, and I was devastated. I'm like 18 years old, 19, and I was in love. I mean, this was the woman I was crazy in love, and I realized in the Celebrate Recovery Step Study, 20 years later, that it was that relationship breakup that sent me to a place where I didn't care about myself anymore. I thought I was ugly. I thought no one would ever love me again. I just thought there was something wrong with me. And so that pushed me into the bars. I had a friend, and he said, "Hey, I can make you forget all about that." And he started taking me to the bars, spandex and, heavy metal music and parties all night long and, all those things. And I just found this new world. But really I was masking the pain. The whole thing was masking the pain. And I ended up with 4 DUIs over about a 4 or 5 year period. Lost my license from 96 to 206. And my family was trying to get me out of Joplin because I got hooked on meth real bad. And they sent me to Memphis. And I came here with my girlfriend and just going to smoke weed now. We're only going to smoke weed, right? And that never works. But anyway,
we're just going to knock it down to one thing.
Yeah, we're just going to smoke weed. Well, I ran out of weed. I was in Midtown Memphis. I realized I didn't have enough cops in Memphis. I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. And I was at a place called Printer's Alley Bar in the middle of Memphis. This little shotgun bar. That's where I found my weed again. And I got hooked on crack cocaine. They ran out of weed, and they're like, "We don't have any weed, but we have a rock." And I'm like, "Well, what's a rock?" I had done cocaine, but I've never done crack cocaine. And I tried that, and it was about a 2-year crazy circus of my life. I would pawn my car to the crack dealer and steal it back from him. I mean, I was crazy. I was bold. I was in a place called Dixie Homes, which is downtown Memphis. Really, really dangerous places. And it got so bad. After about a year and a half, my mom shipped me back to Missouri. at that point. And at that time, I went back to the meth lab, back to my drug, my friends that used and dealt drugs, and that's the only thing I knew. I didn't know there was another life out there. I didn't know God or anything like that at that time. And
So there wasn't no weed in Missouri. It was just a meth.
Oh, there was weed. They had lots of weed, but it was the meth became my drug of choice. And so whenever you have a drug of choice, you probably know this, but all your money has to go towards that.
Yeah, you pretty much pass up everything else.
Right.
Everything else, and that's obsolete. I can do this because this is what I want to do.
Right.
I enjoy this part of it. Yeah.
I'm not going to spend $50 on alcohol. I've got to I've got to have this.
But if I spend the money on this, I'm not going to have that.
That's right.
So it's funny because you weigh your odds there, but if you need gas in the car, you're like, no gas. We're gonna get that. That's what we need.
That's right.
You know,
Exactly right.
I was caught a clip of another recovery podcast, and they were talking to a guy who was in Atlanta, and he was making a drive to some well-known place in Atlanta to buy some drugs.
Right.
And his car broke down on the way, and he hitchhiked from where he was to that place. I think they call it the Bluff. I think.
Yep.
And he just hitchhiked and then stayed there for like 6 months, openly buying and using heroin, just stayed there.
Car on the side of the road.
Car on the side of the road.
Probably towed by that point.
Didn't care. He just stayed there. So it's
when it grabs you, it grabs you, and that's it's like a wrestling match a little bit, but you want to lose, and I hate to say it like that, but literally in that wrestling match, you're just like, you broke my arm.
Yeah,
I'm coming back. So.
Well, so you're back in Missouri. You're back into that mess scene. Where did that take you? Where did that take your story? Like, I kind of sense maybe a rock bottom coming.
Yeah. So when I went back, my dad actually passed away when I was in jail. So I had to say goodbye to my dad with an orange jumpsuit and shackled. They put me back in the city jail for 2 weeks, and I grieved by myself in a cell. By myself in a small cell for 2 weeks. I was waiting to go to rehab. They never found a bed, so they let me back out after like 30 days. And so where do I go? I go back to the bad realm, back to the only thing I knew, because either the bar, the meth lab, or the dope track. I mean, that's where you go for survival. And
imagine dealing with all that pain. In that one instance, you're stuck in a room by yourself. Your thoughts are still.
I felt like someone reached down my throat and just ripped my soul out. Because my dad was my best friend. Towards the end, he would come and find me no matter where I was and tell me he loved me and that he believed in me. And I was in bad shape. I mean, I was riding around like 33 years old, riding around on a bicycle, messed up. And I'm sure his heart was broken, but he always told me, he said, I know you're going to be okay. And so it escalated pretty quickly at that point. My mom had enabled me since I was a young kid. When I was a young kid in Dermot, there was $40 laying on the counter every morning. Just that was her way of helping, right? But that could buy me my weed, my cigarettes, and whatever else I wanted, right? And so it's really amazing. My mom, she was very smart. She was very successful. And she married a man that was a dentist, and they went to Saudi Arabia for 12 years. They came back, and they lived in Memphis. And they were trying to figure out what to do with me because they cared about me, and they loved me, and they wanted to help me, right? And so they went to a meeting in downtown Memphis, and they got lost. And they ended up at another meeting. And that night, all the people in the meeting stopped the meeting, and they all told their testimony around the room that night. And my mom called me the next day, and she said, Stacy, I can't help you anymore. She said, until you get your life straight. That's a mother's love. Mothers never say never. They say, until you get your life straight. So she quit sending me money. At that point, she was sending me $100 bills. I was living in the woods. I was going down the railroad tracks. I was staying in abandoned houses. I would go through the woods to meth lab. And I learned how to, when she cut me off, I had a habit. And I had no way to feed the habit at this point. And so I started stealing things. And I knew when shift change was at the police department. I mean, I knew I was really organized, and I was really planned out, and I thought ahead, and I did all those things. Now I use those skills in God's kingdom. But back then I was, for a drug addict, I had mastered darkness. I wouldn't even come out during the daytime. I would stay out. I would come out at night. I was pillaging, tweaking, dumpster diving. I knew where all these great, I had this existence, and I was really I had a lot. of money and a lot of drugs for that lifestyle, right? I didn't even have to go to work. And I'm riding around on a bicycle, and I had mastered this life. And what I learned through all of that is if you don't get the red flags, God will abandon you, and he'll say, here's all you want. You can have all the meth you want, and then you'll self-destruct. So rock bottom, my first rock bottom was I was sitting in the woods north of Joplin, Missouri. I still know the log to show you the log. It's still there. And I sat on that log that day. My feet were bleeding. I'd probably been walking about 10 miles. I'd burned every bridge. I was hungry. I was filthy dirty. My arms had bruises from meth use. And I just cried, weeping, like really weeping. And I said, God, if you're up there, or if you're there, whatever you are, I need you, because I want to die. I don't want to go on anymore. And I believe he reached down and touched me that day. And wasn't long I had a court case.
Man,
and I went to court.
So much. Like,
yeah. I went to court. I went to court in my hooded sweatshirt with my backpack. And I actually did drugs in the parking lot of the courthouse. And I was supposed to get 5 years of probation that day if I would sign a paper saying I would never come back to Missouri, ever. And the judge had a different plan for me that day. That day I got 6 years in the Department of Corrections that day. And went to prison. You know, first job in prison was stirring oatmeal with a boat paddle. That was my first job in prison. And in that prison, everywhere I looked in that prison, there was always a Bible laying there. And it's funny because it was a Gideon's Bible. And last week I've spoke at 7 of their pastor appreciation dinners. And I get to tell my testimony to the Gideons. And I tell the story about the Bible being in my prison cell. And for the first time in my life, I read the Bible. And I'm like, hey, I've got 6 years, nothing else to do. I might as well read the Bible. I'd never made it past the second chapter, right? I love the creation story. And when I got into the New Testament, I would literally run back home. And at that time, home was my cell. Right, and I would get off at like 9 in the morning, and I would run back to my cell, and I would start reading, because I got in the New Testament. I'm reading about Jesus, and I'm like, this is amazing. I didn't know this stuff was in here, and if this is true, then this is what I need, because my way's not working. I mean, and I gave my life to Christ in that prison. The funny thing is too, they put me leading a group called Turning Point 20 years ago, and for the past 5 years I was leading an organization called Turning Point.
That's awesome.
So Turning Point, they send out books, actually, I think now.
That's a different Turning Point.
Okay.
There's a few different Turning Points. Yep. Yeah, and so I came to Memphis on a Greyhound bus in 2001 with nothing but a backpack. In that backpack, I had a soft cover Bible that someone in jail had given me because they felt sorry for me. 2 pendants. One was Jesus hanging on the cross. One was a little hologram, probably worth $1.50. To me, they're worth $1 million because I found them in the alleys when I was looking for something to trade for drugs. But God was speaking to me back then, and they're my prized possession in my office right now, those 2 little pendants. And 2 changes of clothes I got out of Salvation Army parking lot. So all I had to my name in 2001 when I came to Memphis.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That probably didn't even fill up the backpack. It was probably just...
Well, it just depends on what's in your backpack, actually. But for the first time in my life, in the first time in my life, the only thing that was different, I had relapsed many times. I went to programs. My parents tried acupuncture. They tried everything. But the only difference was this time, I had given my life to Christ, and I had surrendered, and I wasn't using it anymore. That's the 2 things that are the game changers. Yeah.
So in giving your life to Christ, I imagine what changed was the view, the perspective change. And when the perspective changes, the values and beliefs start to change.
Right.
Values and beliefs start to change, then actions and behaviors start to fly.
That's right.
It goes from being so drawn into I'm going to die anyway to I've got something to live for. And so when your view starts to say, I have purpose, I have meaning, your value and belief says, well, if I have purpose, I have meaning, other people have purpose and meaning, so I can help them get what I've got. And all of a sudden you start to disciple people, and your actions are nothing like what you saw before. The mirror effect has changed at this point. So that's amazing, man. That's
Whenever, what I learned is that, whenever you quit putting in the poison, and God's Spirit permeates your being, His Spirit comes in and takes permanent residence in your body. That's what I believe, and He leads me and guides me into this life. It's like a supernatural. It's kind of like an Indiana Jones adventure. I mean, it's awesome. It's the best thing ever, better than any high I've ever had, and it comes through relationship with Christ and being fully surrendered.
And I think that kind of, I hear that so much as this. My life changed when I surrendered. Like I think that's where the power is, and that transformation is when we finally get to the point where we surrender. What is that? Addiction. You only win by surrender.
This is the only battle that you win when you surrender. And you surrender and
quit, you win.
And there's no middle ground.
Yeah.
You can't smoke weed on the weekends. You can't get drunk on New Year's Eve. I mean, you have to surrender, and I teach that at Vertava Health, where I'm the area vice president of operations now. We've had 5,000 people come through the program, and I teach them these principles, and many of them that are in there, and many of them that I spoke about today. But the message doesn't change, and you have to surrender. And so that mindset is, I'm never going to put chemicals in my body again.
Yep.
Because God tells us you can have everything I created beautiful. You can have everything in this world and everything beautiful, but you can't touch your tree. And so we all have your tree, and those two are never going to coexist. You're never going to have everything God has for you and touch your tree. It's not ever going to happen. It doesn't matter how good looking you are, how rich you are, how smart you are. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's only one way to win, and it's surrender. And I see people, come back a few times. That they may come in, they may relapse, and whether it's Celebrate Recovery, Vertava, or wherever it may be, the jail, all the places that I encounter these people, like myself, the message is the same. You can go back and try it again, but if you don't surrender, you're going to get jacked up. I mean, and I believe it's because God wants to use you. God, and it's an honor. It's like God wants to use you, and He's not going to quit until you surrender.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and a part of that is the whole mindset of, I can't be in my will.
That's right.
My will is what led me to my seat inside the recovery meeting.
That's right.
I can't continue down the path of my will and expect change.
That's right.
And that's why we got step 3. I have to wake up every morning, and I've got to live inside God's will, not mine. And I think that's just, when I look back at all the steps, I think all the steps are equally important. But when I lay them out, to me, my favorite and most important one is step number 3. I've got to be in His will, not mine.
It's an amazing revelation to realize it's His plan, it's not mine.
Yeah.
It's His plan, it's not your plan. You know what I mean? And when you tell people that, they're like, it's like,
I don't understand.
It's kind of like when you tell them you're being safe from yourself. They're like, or when I tell them when I tell them in the jail, like I go into the jail and I say you're not being punished, they're like ready to fight. You know what I mean? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm not being punished. I'm telling you, you're not being punished. You're being saved.
Yeah.
So
You're being prepared, you're prepped actually
That's right.
for battle for something else.
Sanctified.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, Stacy, I know you have a big part in Celebrate Recovery. Was that what really kind of helped you, like that click moment of where everything kind of just fell in place? And was that what it did it for you? Was Celebrate Recovery, or what was it that actually helped you with that?
So the second rock bottom, the first rock bottom was on the log. The second rock bottom was when I was in prison for 14 months and no one came to visit me. And I laid every night with my Bible on my chest saying, God, if you could use me, this would be great. And I was learning about God. I didn't have anybody teach me, really. I was learning by myself by reading and things. And so then when I got out and I came, I didn't go to church for like 6 years. I was watching T.D. Jakes and Joel Osteen and Joyce Meyer, and I would watch it every night, all night long. But I wasn't going to church. But I was staying clean, reading my Bible, doing all those things. But I was saturating myself with the Word, right? And so I got a job at Sharp Electronics. I didn't think anybody would give me a job in 2001, and I worked there for 11 years. And I met a lady named Stephanie, which is my wife. She's my angel, and she's my accountability partner. She holds me accountable, makes sure I'm on point. And anyway, I started going to church and setting up, and we ended up going to a big church. It had about 1,300 people in it. And I went to my missions pastor. His name's Jim May, and he was an ex-Harley's Hell's Angel, and really cool guy. And I said, hey, I've got this bad past, and I just want to serve somewhere. And I'll never forget, he said, you need to go to Celebrate Recovery. He said they need all the help they can get down there. And I went down there. Within about a month and a half or 2 months, I was on a plane flying to Saddleback, and I went to a summit, and I've been in love with Celebrate Recovery ever since. But one of the key things about Celebrate Recovery is God used Celebrate Recovery to lead me to everything that I do. I was Man of the Year in 2017 in Horn Lake, a city I don't even live in. I was nominated for Man of the Year in South Haven for my work with the Hope Center, the 501. When I went to meet the county supervisors to talk about what we can do to help the kids in the area, I was telling them about Celebrate Recovery. It ended up now I have a community center, which is a Memphis Grizzlies affiliate, and all those things. The job that I have now started out with me being a recovery coach. I did get to take care of my mom for 14 months. I got to change diapers and feed her for 14 months, and she lived with me. My stepdad actually gave me a ride to work for 6 years, and he's got to live with me too for another. After she passed, he got to stay with me, and Celebrate Recovery. So we'd set up chairs, tear down chair. I mean, for 10 years, right? And I'm thinking, this is, what does this mean? I mean, it's not really significant. We're doing good. Sometimes we had 100 people a night, but God used that ministry, Celebrate Recovery, to lead me to everything that I do today. Even my job at Vertava Health, they wanted to hear about Celebrate Recovery. And so I tell people, Celebrate Recovery is like a leadership factory. It is also, if you get into God's realm and start doing the littlest things, He will lead you into His perfect will for your life through that ministry. And so I'm a big believer in Celebrate Recovery. I promote it everywhere I go.
This podcast is a direct result
from Celebrate Recovery. Both of us, actually.
I mean, I can't sit here and say that it was a little part. Celebrate Recovery played a big part. And so, and I mean, like I said, we promote any and all forms of recovery, all recovery paths. What works for you, whether it be jail, rehab, God, going out, meditating in the woods, sitting in a sweat tent, whatever it is. But for me, for Drew, and for Stacy,
it was Celebrate Recovery.
Christian 12-step program worked. And so, man, that's awesome. I know you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what are you doing today that helps keep you sober?
So,
I know we talked about it. So
the thing that I do today that helps keep me sober. So sharing my testimony wherever I'm asked. I do the community center. We do that on Saturdays. We pray. We take the kids Chick-fil-A, Cone Ice. We dance, play basketball. But it's all about giving them a safe place to go. And then Celebrate Recovery, I do that. I take Celebrate Recovery inside into DeSoto County Jail. Led thousands of men to Jesus in the DeSoto County Jail. Actually baptized 700 people at where I work at Turning Point, which is now Vertava Health. Most people in the area know it as Addiction Campuses, but now it is a new company a new organization called Vertava Health. And Vertava means turn life. And this is the.
Sorry, I murdered that name earlier.
It's okay. It's a leading national behavioral health care system that focuses on substance use and mental health disorders, the co-occurring disorders. And so we've had 5,000 people come through. We have about 1,000 people a year just at our campus, just at our location in South Haven, and they're going to open up to 400 campuses across the United States. And if they believe in Jesus, if Christianity is their thing, then they can go to church. We can baptize them. We give them a Bible. If they don't believe in that, we do AA, we do NA, whatever their spirituality is, we want them to connect to that so they can get clean. But going to Celebrate Recovery every week, going in the jail every week, and then working at Vertava gives me access to so many people and so many families. I get Facebook messages and texts pretty much daily for people that want can you help my child? And it's a great honor, first of all, to make sure that they don't think their child is a bad human being before I start helping, and then it's kind of funny because it's like, why would you call the liar, the junkie, and the thief? Right. When you have your masters and all those things, why would you call me? And I ask that question when I'm teaching to the crowd, and because I'm wanting them to understand you have a gift. And the gift is rock bottom. And I call it the gift of rock bottom. To me, it's the greatest thing next to your salvation, because it did it to me while I was in prison, but I didn't realize it until 10 years later, that it creates unconditional love in your heart, and you can love people like no one else can from that day forward. And I teach them that they have that gift, and I teach them that they have that character because they're in jail or because they're in recovery, that they have gifts that people with their master's degree would love to have. Because I've had people tell me, I would love to have what you have.
Right.
But they have everything, and it's a gift. And you can't buy it, you can't teach it, you can't earn it, you can't give it away. You have to. It only comes through pain and through your experiences with God, but it makes you love more, and it makes you love in a very special way. So it's a great gift.
It kind of reminds me of a quote that I heard where addiction gives us an experience that nobody would pay for.
Right. Hey, when I was going into prison, let me just tell you, I would have given you anything not to go in.
Yeah.
But God taught me things in prison and protected me and did things in that prison that I could have never learned anywhere else. And the journey of rebuilding a life is you can't buy those things. You know.
Well, Stacy, as we wind up here, I just sitting here listening to your story, that is where the hope is. To go from a kid in Missouri, starting out, getting addicted with cigarettes, going down through your journey, with getting hooked on meth, going to Memphis, West Monroe, back up to Missouri, back down, and to wind up through all of that, you're rock bottom on the log, rock bottom in jail, and to end up in the position where you're at. It's amazing. That is amazing, and it is a sure enough miracle. And it's the biggest ray of hope that I can think of. Yeah. You are a lighthouse of hope for those that are drowning in the hopelessness and in the darkness of addiction. If your story isn't a fiery example of hope and that we do recover, I don't know what is. And so as we close out, I want to thank you for coming by and sharing. But as a way of expressing our gratitude and for you to share and be so vulnerable, I want you to have an open mic. You have a few moments. Mm-hmm. Our show is your show. There's somebody out there right now that's listening that needs to hear what you have to say. What would that be?
That God has a plan for your life, and it's much bigger than anything you could ever imagine. You don't have to have it all figured out. All you have to do is trust in Him and just stay clean. If you can just not use right now, then everything will work out. I learned in my life that if I give God what He wants, He's going to give me what I want. And what that means is if I go to the jail on the nights I don't want to go, I don't feel like going, I'm tired and things, but I know I'm supposed to be there. And if I do that, then all the things that I ever dreamed of that I wanted, I have them. Actually, I wanted the house, I wanted the car, I wanted the Gibson Les Paul, I wanted all those things. And guess what? I have them all. And guess what? That's what I tell the guys. I guess, where am I at? So it's Thursday night, 8:30, and I'm sitting there with inmates in the jail that I voluntarily checked myself in because I know that's where God wants me to be. And so I tell people He wants to use you and your story just like He used me, because God doesn't show favoritism, but you have to surrender, and then He wants to lead you to people. And so you don't get to choose who He leads you to. You don't get to choose them, right? And I usually tell this funny thing when I'm sitting there with like 50 people, and I say, if He let me choose, I would choose a much better looking group, right? And then I have to say, that's a joke, because some of them are going, but they're laughing. But it's true, and I'm trying to teach a lesson. I'm trying to teach them that they have a gift, and that they're going to be more powerful because of where they've been in God's kingdom. But I'm trying to teach them that He leads you to people, places, and things, right? The same way when you're walking in the bad realm, where did I go when I was homeless and I would wake up in the morning in an abandoned house? I didn't have any money. I would go to the meth lab or the dope track or the bar because I knew someone would help me survive, right?
Right.
In the good realm is the same way. If you have to walk one way each day. When we wake up, we have to walk one way. The good, the bad, the light, the dark, God, and the devil. Whichever way you walk, the forces of that realm, being people, are going to help you. Yeah. They're going to help you either destroy your life or they're going to help you rebuild your life. And so when you walk towards that good realm, and I tell them, to give you an example, you're in it. Because you voluntarily came to Celebrate Recovery, you voluntarily came to church today in jail, and that's where you'll find God's blessings. And I do know that He guides our steps. And what I've learned is that the Holy Spirit is alive. But what else I've learned is every word in that Bible is on point. Yep. And it's the game changer. Yep.
No doubt. Well, Stacy, as we wind up, if somebody wants you to come speak at their recovery group, or maybe they want you to come and share your story on their recovery podcast, what is a great way for them to contact you?
Just email stacydodd67@gmail.
All right, we're going to put that on the in the show notes and probably on the bottom of the screen if we can figure that out. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, find this man on Facebook. He puts out some of the most awesome stuff that I've ever read. Like, you motivate, like reading your Facebook post every day, like it motivates me. I love it. And also you can get his book, Backpack to the Burbs. You can get that on Amazon. We're going to put that link in the show notes as well. It's a great read. Excited to be able to sit down and read it. And also, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like this and subscribe. Help us to reach more people. And with that, guys, that's all we got for today. We love y'all, and remember to be unashamed.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Recovery fam. Thanks for watching another episode of the Unashamed Recovery Podcast. And if today's episode has somehow helped you out, or maybe it's encouraged you to get into recovery, consider subscribing to our channel, like this video. You can even give us a comment.
Yeah. What? What was I supposed to say?
I like it, social media.
Oh, well, I was getting on there and liking it. See?
Guys, you can find us on all social media at Unashamed Recovery